So, hey, this morning we're going to talk about the 3 myths of the new year. Because these 3 myths will derail 2021 for you. These 3 myths will derail your faith if you're not careful. These 3 myths will derail your marriage. It will derail your job. It will derail your church and your commitment to God. It can derail so many things if these 3 myths become the truths that are not really true in your life. And so I want to talk about these 3 myths that basically are so prevalent in our thinking, and yet, in all honesty, as good as they sound, they are not true. All right? So let's talk about those 3 myths real quick. First off is this one, the New Year, New You myth. I'm just telling you, the New Year, New You myth. I know it sounds good, but I want you to think for a moment. At midnight tonight, or even at 6 p.m. tomorrow, or a month from now, or 6 months from now, will you truly be a new you just because a new year came? I don't want to discourage you. That's not my point. My point isn't to say to you nothing's going to happen. I want you to understand, and I want you to help you find encouragement in this new year by understanding this. Whether right now, tomorrow, or 6 months from now, you are still going to be you. As a matter of fact, the only way that you can be the new you, whatever that looks like, and I don't even like that phrase, is that if you desire to accept who you are to begin with and actually embrace that, and then secondly, be willing to make choices that improve your life on a almost minute-by-minute basis, some days on a daily basis, sometimes on a yearly basis. And then that way, through those new choices, through those new things that you do, which are just like taking breaths, they have to be a everyday discipline type of thing, and your body knows to breathe for you, and you need to know that making new choices continues to make something different in your life happen. But you're still going to be you. As a matter of fact, God created you to be you. So don't try to shed all of the you. Really try to embrace who you are, and then make better choices as you go along, and that will continue to make some things new in your life. See, we have what we call the capacity factor in leadership. Capacity factor basically says this: if you have an 8-ounce glass, you can't pour a gallon of milk in it. I mean, you just can't do it. 8 ounces will only handle 8 ounces. And listen, some of us, me sometimes, you sometimes, we're only able to handle 8 ounces. But because people tell us we need to have a whole gallon in our life to be somebody, we keep trying to pour that gallon in, and all it ever makes is a mess. And so listen to me. You need to understand that the New Year, New You myth will absolutely derail your world within a few days, because you're going to go back and look in the mirror and you're still going to be there. You're still going to be shaving the same face. You're still going to be washing the same hair. You're still going to be combing the same hair. You're still going to be feeding the same mouth. You're going to be living with the same people. You're going to be working with the same people. You're still going to be you. And so look, being you isn't the worst thing. But sometimes you have to make better choices so that you can actually enjoy life better. You don't need to be a new you. You need new choices and be who God gave you to be, making the right choices. And by doing that, you will find 2021 much better, not because things change, but because you continue to change who you are by your choices. Which leads me to the second myth, and I'm telling you, this one, after 2020, this myth is so prevalent. I've heard it said literally 5 to 6 times this morning alone while I was sitting in a local restaurant eating breakfast. I'm telling you, this is such an incredibly scary myth. Here it is. This year will be better. Yeah, I went ahead and said it. I put it right out there for you to look at. This year will be better. Again, I want you to stop for a moment, not to discourage you, but I want you to understand that 2021 may actually be better, but there's no hope that there's no reality in the fact that we know it's going to be better. Our hope can't be put in the fact that it's going to be better. I guarantee you tomorrow we will still have the same political headlines that we have today. Next week, we will still have the same economics ups and downs that we have today. They may look a little different, the numbers may change a little, but the reality is those that are struggling are going to continue to struggle, and those that are flourishing continue to flourish, it seems like. And that's the reality of how life works for humans. You see, one paradox I came in contact with in the last year I thought was it became one of my easier ways to describe my everyday life, and I found it to be really, really cool to share with others. It's called the Stockdale paradox. It says this: balancing realism and optimism in dire situations is the key to success. It's basically named for a gentleman by the name of Jim Stockdale, who was a POW for 7 years in the Vietnam War. You can read his entire story in the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. Stockdale was beaten and tortured because he was one of the highest ranking naval officers ever captured during the Vietnam War. And repeatedly they tried to pressure him into doing propaganda videos or propaganda photos so that the Viet Cong could be able to try to say that everything was fine for the POWs in the camps. And what happened was, in one time when he thought they were going to actually get away with trying to do this against his will, he actually cut his own face up so that he would not look like he was doing good. They could not put him on camera. He actually cut his face so they could not use him as some propaganda picture. Then I want you to realize that when you are in a place where that you're like Stockdale, where it looks like life is never going to get any better, he still believed it would get better. So when he was asked who was most likely to die in the POW camps, he answered this. It's going to be a surprising answer for you because it was a surprising answer for me. He said the optimists are going to be the most likely to die. The optimists. You see, they would say things like, we're going to be home by Christmas, or we're going to be home by Easter. We'll be home by spring. We'll be home by Thanksgiving. We'll be home by next year. We'll be home by the first of the year. And as each of those milestones continued to pass, they lost more and more hope because their hope was in something that was going to change, not in something that was in reality balanced out by optimism. And because of that, those optimists were the ones to die consistently. Because what happens is, when you have optimism and life does not come true according to what you optimize, you have a tendency to die inside, and what happens next normally is death outside. When you give up on the inside, it happens to the outside as well. Even if you don't die, you can see people whose insides have died. You've met those people, and you know what they look like, don't you? You know the face they make. You know the way they talk. And if you heard someone start speaking that way when they don't normally, and you knew them or your family started doing that, you'd say, what's wrong? Because it's evident to us. We see it happening. And so in a year like we've had, even the last couple of years of turmoil that we've experienced, even here in America, throughout the world, the truth is humans still love and humans still hate. And that's not going to change. You're still going to have humans that love and humans that hate. It's not going to change. The question is, are you willing to balance realism and optimism during the unfortunate hours that may come in 2021, and as a result, find the key to succeeding through some of the most difficult, dark hours? Listen, I'm not great at doing this, but that doesn't change the truth of the matter, that we can have optimism and realism balanced out together, and then therefore begin to actually chart a better future. Stockdale said to himself, basically, I knew I would see my family again. I knew I would see them again. I didn't know when. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I wasn't even sure what it would look like when it happened. But basically, he knew he was going to see his family again. But in the interim time, while he had to wait, he held on to the convictions that would help him face reality, and even the reality of being a prisoner of war. Now, that's powerful. Think about that. The Stockdale paradox. The third one is one that happens year-round, but it's certainly prevalent during this time of year with the new year coming on. And it's this myth: bigger, better, and faster. That's right. 2021 is going to be bigger, better, and faster, or bigger, better, and whatever. Bigger and better and more successful. Bigger and better and whatever. Bigger and better. Our theology is full of bigger and better today. Did you know that? I mean, Americans, they basically lap up this idea and theology that everything's going to be bigger and better and faster and more spiritual and more holy and all this stuff. And we actually lap that up like a dog lapping up water out of a bowl. And we're like eating at the hands of the people who are taking our money, our time, our thinking, and they're taking it and they're actually shaping it for their purposes, not for your best interests. Listen, I am not trying to disparage anybody. I'm just telling you that truth is truth and false is false. It's as simple as that. True is true and false is false. And so listen to me. Bigger, better, faster, more success. That is not always the best for you. And I don't care if a preacher says it from a pulpit or a speaker says it from some, stadium, or you hear it on the radio through some program, someone who says that they're a leader or someone who says that they're a religious leader or that they're an example, a teacher, whatever they call themselves, including me. Doesn't matter who it is that says it, it still makes it wrong. Not everybody experiences bigger, better. I'm just telling you, we don't. I don't experience bigger, better all the time. That's just the way life is. I'm pleased and I'm thankful for the things I get to experience. I've experienced a little bit of success and I'm very thankful for that. But I'm telling you, bigger, better, badder doesn't fit me. And if I lived by that, then when it's not bigger and it's not badder, then I'll do things like question my faith. I'll question my commitment. I'll question my marriage. I'll question my job. I'll be changing from place to place to place, trying to find bigger, better, and better. And when I don't find it, I'll just be down and try to repeat that type of thinking. And when that type of thinking continues to repeat, it's a constant cycle of up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's not a constant cycle up and down in the circumstances. It's a constant cycle up and down in your heart, in your mind, in your thinking, in your faith, in your relationships, in your commitments. Because you don't have the energy to commit. Because you're facing the circumstances thinking bigger, better, badder. Listen, I'm not against positive thoughts. As a matter of fact, let me just challenge you with this. You can have a positive attitude. In other words, it doesn't have to be all high and mighty and all kinds of happy and smiley. But you can have a positive attitude in the poorest of conditions because it's your choice to say, yes, I have something on my side that's bigger than what I'm facing. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I'm just telling you, you cannot face life thinking it's always going to get bigger, badder, and better. You just can't. Some of you, listen, this is not wrong. This is not bad. Some of you are going to be the constant, steady, amazing people making a persevering choice every day to go to work, to love your kids, to love your family, to love your spouse, to love your job, not because it's a great job, but because you want to love what God wants you to love, and that is the toil of your hands. God gave us the toil of our hands for a reason. And you can love that even if it never seems to change. You can shovel stuff. Put your own word in there if you want. You can shovel stuff the rest of your life and still be a happy person and don't need bigger and better. Listen, I understand we all need to grow. I'm not against growth. I'm just telling you, for whatever reason, I'm probably never going to be a brain surgeon. Matter of fact, I'm never going to be a brain surgeon. And I don't want to be bigger, better, and badder to become a brain surgeon, for crying out loud. I don't think that's God's call in my life. God's call in my life is sitting right here, right now, talking to you. Going about the process of encouraging cancer patients and long-term illness patients and their families during grief and during some of the darkest hours of their days. That's what my purpose is. And sometimes you don't get bigger, better, badder. Sometimes people pass. They don't live. And if you only bigger, better, and badder is your theology, then death is going to take you and it's going to slap you around. Because we're mortals and we only live for so long. That's a hard thing. I don't like the idea that I'm closer to death than I am to my birth. I don't like that. But that's the truth. So I can decide to pout and whine. I can talk about how I can be bigger, better, badder. I can work out, which I do. I can take medicines. I can take vitamins. I can do all that. But the reality is I'm going to be me, and my me may not be bigger, better, badder, like some people keep telling me on the radio, on the television, or in some article I'm reading. That myth can actually derail your 2021. It can derail your life. And so be careful. Be careful. Having bigger isn't wrong. Having better isn't wrong. Having more or faster isn't wrong. The question is that where your hope is? Is that where your hope is? Which brings me to the last thing I want to talk about. You know the three myths we've talked about. New year, new you. Okay? The whole idea of bigger, better, and badder. And then this year's got to be better. Those myths will derail you if you're not careful. But let me tell you what won't derail you. If you really want a new you, if you really want a better you, a better year, a bigger and better, then get the best remodeling job ever offered. Get the best upgrade that you'll ever get. Beyond Windows 10, beyond anything software-wise or phone-wise or house-wise or whatever it is. Tune into this message. Ask Jesus to help you in 2021. Ask Jesus to give you what he wants you to have in 2021. And for the Apostle Paul, he would say, my whatever year it was being in prison. Do you realize that Paul wrote 2/3 of the New Testament? And almost 80% of that was written from a prison cell. So our bigger, better, badder doesn't fit Paul's life, and yet we call him the Apostle Paul. He is looked on so highly as one of the church fathers. We talk about the Apostle Peter, St. Peter, St. Paul. Well, Peter, for crying out loud, he denied Jesus. He went about preaching. He had conflict with Paul over the fact that he was prejudiced. If Peter had to have bigger, better, and badder, then he wouldn't have been crucified upside down, is what church history and church tradition tells us. How is bigger, better, and badder going to fit the crucified upside down for Peter? How's it going to fit someone who is in a prison right now in a communist country because they have faith in Christ? How is your myths going to fit their situation? I'll tell you how they will. They won't. But I'll tell you what will fit their situation. I'll tell you what kept Paul writing. I can tell you what keeps a Christian believing in Christ when he's locked down in a communist country. I'll tell you what people do to keep going when they can't seem to keep going, and when life and attitude and everything else has failed them, they look to the one who doesn't fail. So ask Jesus to help you in 2021. I don't even know what that looks like for you. That may be one of the bounciest, bumpiest years you've ever had. And I'm telling you, there's some families right now, they're having the bounciest, bumpiest year they've ever had. But that doesn't change the fact that Jesus is faithful to us. That Jesus is faithful to his word, and his promises can be relied upon. And that's what helps make a cancer patient's attitude like the one that a young lady by the name of Tracy Gordon had, who found out she had cancer basically after she had her first child. And she came and she made phone calls week after week to other people while she herself was fighting and actually losing the battle near the end to cancer. But she had the ultimate victory because she had Jesus. Our bodies are going to fade. Our lives are going to fail. Our best intentions are going to fall short sometimes. Our most amount of love we can give may be rejected. But I tell you this, Jesus said that whoever comes to me, I will not turn away. So you and I know that if 2021 is going to really be what 2021 needs to be, then we can set aside those myths and we can hang on to something that is more stable than any economy, that's more stable than any government system, that's more stable than any job you have, that's more stable than any marriage you're in, that's more stable than any circumstance you can begin to imagine. It is more stable not because it fixes things in this time frame of earth. It's because it fixes things eternally so that what happens here on earth is understood in light of the eternal. So I encourage you that right now, take 2021 and say, Jesus, I want you to give me what I need in 2021. When I say that, listen, part of me just gets a cold fear inside of me. Not because I don't believe in Jesus, because I know Jesus has allowed people to go through some of the most horrific circumstances for his purposes. And that's hard to hear. But listen, if you need someplace to look to find a little bit of encouragement in the midst of something really difficult, look at the cross next to Jesus. Look at the thief who said to his counterpart on the other side of Jesus, we get what we're getting because we deserve it. We did something wrong. This man has done nothing wrong. And he looks to Jesus and he says, Jesus, I want you to remember me when you come in your kingdom. And Jesus turns to him. Listen, this thief, he couldn't get bigger, better, badder. He couldn't have a better year. He could not come close to wondering what the next year was going to hold. And yet Jesus looked at him and said, this day you will be with me in paradise. That's the hope that even a thief on a cross can look at and say, listen, this man, there's something different. And if you don't believe there's something different about Jesus, just start looking at the history of Jesus. Don't even bother with all the religious stuff. Just look at the history of Jesus first. And that may make you take a look at what he says, which may make you take a look at your faith. And who knows what that could look like in 2021.